So, how's your life
Life is good.
been going? How's the alumni doing?
Alumni is great. Got lots of great things happening, and we're about ready to launch what I think is going to be kind of a transformational piece for the next 20 years.
That's great.
Right? The foundation was well done.
Wonderful.
Now we're ready to start to think. We've got 1,000, 1,500 graduates
That's great.
every year.
Well, welcome back, everybody. Kelly Kendall here on 100.3 Radio St. George with special guest John Bowler, the alumni director at Dixie State University, a great friend. I consider him one of my buddies in life, and our lives have intertwined off and on over the years.
Very true.
Clear back from the day. So let's start at the beginning, should we? So we're going to talk a little bit about you and your love of being a dad, love of life. Let's talk about in the beginning. You were born in
St. George.
the old Pioneer Memorial Hospital.
Pioneer Memorial Hospital.
And then you grew up in Mesquite.
And I grew up in Mesquite, Virgin Valley Bulldog country.
You were a bulldog.
I was a bulldog.
And they're pretty famous, right, for sports. If I remember right, you were like an all-star track guy.
Oh, you're a kind man. I tried my best, Kelly. That 100-yard dash at the time.
You were fast. You were like Speedy Gonzalez,
was
right?
a little elusive, but yes, I tried my best to win state.
Awesome. Well, like I said, we're here in St. George, Utah, Dixie State campus, Radio St. George, 100.3. Kelly Kendall and John Bowler. And we have lots to talk about today, so let's just jump right in. Let's talk about the history, your history.
All right.
From being born in St. George at the old Pioneer Memorial Hospital to being a bulldog of Mesquite, and then talk about what was that like growing up in Mesquite?
Well, it was a lot of fun. It was a small town then. It was probably not more than 2,000 people, probably including dogs and cats. Right?
How many's there now? What's the population?
I think it's pushing 20,000 people.
Wow, that's 10 times growth.
Yeah, it's and now that's snowbirds. It's like us in St. George. They have a lot of winter visitors, but I'll bet right now there's 20,000 people down there.
So let's talk about, what did you do as a kid? Did you ride your bike? Did you go hunting? What did you hunt in the desert?
Not much. I loved to go outside. We had a sand hill to the north of my house, and we had what was called the bear cave. It was literally about 1.5 feet deep, maybe 2 feet deep, and the side of a sandstone, sand kind of hill.
Like the Dixie Rock a little bit?
No, it wasn't. It was like that light sand. It was actually sand.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
More sandy.
Oh.
Right, so it wasn't the red. It was
beach
the
sand
beach
kind of
sand,
stuff. Yeah.
But it had hardened, and so somebody had carved out. And we would, as kids, we would roam up there, and friends, we'd go up and just spend the day. And nobody would care where we were.
No cell phones.
No cell phones. We'd be out there in the middle of the desert alone, just pretending, imagining, pirating, right? All the kinds of things that young men and women do as they.
Did you have a curfew, or was it when the sun went down, or when
the sun went down,
or when you were hungry,
or when we were hungry? One of those two, or unless we saw the family car coming up the road to try and find us, right? So.
You saw the dust behind
we knew somebody was coming looking for us.
The dust cloud heading up.
We weren't sure that was a good thing or a bad thing. Were we getting in trouble, or were we, going to dinner?
So obviously you had a few times where you ran away up there to get away from something, right? Maybe. Or not so much.
I remember thinking of running away once or twice, but I didn't get very far because Vegas was 70 miles. St. George was over the old road, which you have to be old enough like me to know what the old road was.
Sure.
There was no canyon there was no gorge. There was just the Virgin River running through the gorge. No freeway.
That would have been a hike.
It would
through
have been
the
a
gorge.
hike either way. It would have been,
man.
it would have been a rough go. So I realized I probably wasn't going to make it very far, and figured I could probably last at home some more time.
That's awesome.
But I had a great childhood.
Yeah.
You know, in a small town, I think one of the challenges that you have is that you don't have a lot of built-in entertainment like we do today. So you had to make your own fun, and you had to think about things that you would do to do that. So, we'd go plink in the hills with our 22s, or
Sure.
or try and catch fish in the river with our hands, right?
Sure.
You
You had to be
friends,
creative.
You had to be
yeah?
creative, yeah.
You had to use your imagination.
Yeah.
You know what's sad these days? Kids playing video games, cell phones. They don't even go out and ride their bikes.
Yeah.
In fact, the number one pandemic in America is childhood obesity.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of the
Yeah.
top, right?
I believe
it's a
it.
serious problem.
Yep.
And it's affecting our families, our children, and things like that. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But
Okay.
let's talk about how you got to Dixie. So you came to Dixie State, and
Yeah, I was I have a long history of having family at Dixie. So my dad was here, my brother was here. It was the easy and the feel good family kind of place to go.
sure. And it was Dixie College then, junior
That's
college.
Junior college, 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was kind of family-like. In fact, I remember when John lived in the trailers, the
Yeah.
Terra Trailers.
Terra Trailers 21.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Where was that? That was
Right.
like,
Right here by right where the Hawsey is.
yeah, I remember.
Pretty close. I mean, maybe a little more south, but yeah, right there.
In fact, there's quite a story of a gun going off in that and putting a hole in the student housing.
It was
The
not me,
trailers.
just so
They were-
everybody knows. It was not me. I won't mention names because I
could
don't
call
want to embarrass him
Joey.
through worldwide.
We
but
could
yeah.
call Joey and get the real story, right?
He would say it was me, but I would say it was him. So there's and the statute of limitations has run out. So
Sure.
there's
Things are different now. You had a gun in student housing.
Ah,
It was a
yeah.
single wide trailer,
yeah,
a row of them. that people
22
lived in
rifle. Yeah,
and went through the. What would happen if they had guns in the student housing now?
I think that would be ugly, right?
Could be a problem.
Could be a problem.
Yeah, better not.
We
better not give
encourage
them,
that.
Yeah, no ideas.
No,
ideas.
don't do that.
And another thing that
We thought we were going to be kicked out. By the way, we
Sure.
were sure that was going to happen even back then. And
we could call George Scott and ask
that's
him
right,
about it.
That's right.
He might have been in on the deal.
That he was. He came down and laughed almost harder than he should have, probably. So he thought that was pretty funny, and we were sighing a sigh of relief because I was thinking, "Oh my gosh, we're in trouble."
Yeah, and then the next year, you're student body president.
Yeah. Went from hoodlum to student body president.
That's awesome. Well, and it was fun because I was on the LDSSA when you were the student body
Yeah.
president,
Yeah.
and those were the good days, right?
Yeah, Mr. Dixie, and
Yeah.
I mean, I think you and I competed against each other at Mr. Dixie, right?
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
Shenanigans.
Kind
I
of
don't think either one
embarrassing.
of us won.
I was a runner-up.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I was going to say I knew that I was not in the running. So
I was. In fact, if you go to the Black Bear Diner,
your pictures
on
there?
the menu, they have it, and
Oh,
people
that's awesome.
people take pictures of it and send it to me all the time. It's kind of
Oh, that's
embarrassing.
funny. Yeah, that's
Anyway.
awesome.
So you were here at Dixie, and then that Dixie changed your life, really. Dixie,
Yeah,
being a
did.
student here.
It gave me a foundation that I had not. Again, Virgin Valley gave me a good foundation with some things, but I had missed some things that I really needed. Great Professor Tim Bywater called me one day and said, "John, we're going to have to work on your English skills," which is true, which is exactly what I needed.
He called you on the phone.
He kept me after class one day and said, "This paper's unacceptable, right? You're gonna have to learn some things before I can give you a
Wow.
grade, right? You're gonna have to.
What
you're
a
gonna
great
yeah,
professor
fantastic guy.
to give you that
Still
kind
here.
to give you that feedback.
Yeah. So
Wow. Yeah.
so it changed. It people who really started to take an individual interest in me, which happened in Virgin Valley, but it also happened at Dixie, which was good for me because I had missed some things that I really needed to have before I could go on to a university.
Sure.
So
So the things about making you who you are today, the father you are today, we call it intergenerational. So you talk about growing up in Mesquite around, your dad had the store, and
Yep.
there's
worked at the store all the time.
work ethic, different things like that. We'll talk about how you want to what do you want to pass on? The traits. We're going
Yeah.
in a few minutes. The real traits. What do you want to pass on to your kids? And there's a somber thought to be considering here. If you were, heaven forbid, something happened and you passed on, what would you want your children to say about you?
I've written it all out, Kelly. So they've
already
got
written
the
it.
copies. Yeah. It's all fluff, no substance.
Yeah, that'd be great.
No, I've got. I've worked hard to make an impact in their lives. Right. Mm-hmm. I had a great dad, and I had a great mom, but they didn't see eye to eye. They got divorced they separated when I was about 10, and when I was about 14, they finalized their divorce. And
that's
then
a tough time. That is that age.
Tough time.
My goodness, it's so impressionable. It's such. Not only that, but I mean that age is a struggle.
Yeah.
For boys and girls, right? It's that hormones are coming. You're maturing and trying to be independent, and then that happens, and that's.
It was tough time. But I think, in a way, they were a gift when they did that, because I think that so many times we see a pattern, and I could kind of make my own way, because my dad and my mom were separated for so long, and my mom and dad didn't get along super well at the end, right? They've been married for 35 years.
Sure.
I mean, they've been married a long time.
Yeah.
But I think my other siblings had some struggles because they were, because there was conflict. There was a lot of friction and a lot of, not getting along really internally in the family. And so I think that kind of, I was spared from a lot of that. And then my dad remarried a wonderful woman, and life kind of went back to normal, and I'd go see my mom in Hurricane and stay with my dad. So that was kind of an unusual thing. Most kids were going with their mothers.
Right.
And I stayed with my dad, and I think that was good for me, because it kept me in a place where I knew everybody, right? There was, like you said, there were so many things going on in my life that one other change would have really been hard.
Yeah.
I would have been a tiger instead of a bulldog.
That's right.
I mean, holy mackerel. It would have been fun, but it would have just been a lot of change.
Yeah, and that would be, that's an interesting thing, because that's not really common. So as you consider that, how's that affected you in your being a dad today?
Yeah, and thank you for that question, because that's where I was thinking along those lines. Because what really changed that perspective was I didn't want that for my children. Right, I wanted them to have what we would call a traditional family, and at least someone that I really cared for and loved and was friends with, and we didn't have a ton of conflict. Every couple has conflict, right?
I can't even imagine you and your wife having conflict.
Well, it does happen, and yet I didn't want to have the kids in a situation ever where there wasn't a really loving relationship between a husband and wife. Right. And so I really, I took a long time getting married. I was really deliberate about that. And I married the love of my life. And so when we started to have kids, I was comfortable that Shannon would be a wonderful mother, and that she would really do for those kids one of the things that I knew I had, because I had sisters and a mother and father who didn't get along, but they really did care for me. They really did love me.
Sure.
And so
you're easy to love, by the way.
I felt cherished, right? I felt like I was somebody important. I had self-worth to them. And I had lots of people who gave that to me in Mesquite and here at Dixie. And so I knew that was something that I wanted my kids to have. And so that was, to answer your question, that it framed my whole paradigm of how am I going to choose a spouse? How am I going to
You consciously thought about this as a process.
Because my parents were divorced.
Yeah.
Right? I was thinking I want my life to be what I think it should be, and I don't want this to happen. Right? And so I remember consciously thinking through that, even at even at 14, 15, right? I was
Wow.
very conscious about that. And so, and the kids, I wanted my kids to be cherished and loved. And I specifically looked for traits like that in dates and women that I thought were really attractive and good and, you know, had similar ideals and interests, right? But I was really, that was one of my primary factors.
Wow.
So, and then I wanted to be a good dad, but I had a good example of that. I had some patterns.
Sure.
You know, it's an interesting analogy, but an agave plant molds every leaf by the last generation, right? So that's the concept that you know, by analogy, that's what I was looking for. I was trying to think, how do I look for family patterns and a spouse, a companion who would make that work for me, right?
Did you, when you were dating Shannon,
Yeah.
did you talk about things like how many children you wanted to have, or discipline, how you wanted to discipline? Because most of the time, you know how couples are. We fall in love. You're like, she looks like she'd be a good person to kiss.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you know, chemistry.
Yep.
And most people, most couples, and there's some research behind this, we fall in love and then we try to get them to be our best friend.
Yeah.
Instead of become a friend and then you fall in love, right?
And that's exactly what happened to me so whether that's the exception to the rule or the rule, I don't know, but I needed to have deep conversations with my spouse. I knew that it couldn't be superficial. And so the people that I dated that were, you know, that I just didn't connect with on a deeper level, I just knew it couldn't go anywhere, right? And Shannon, we had deep conversations. We became friends first. You know, the transition from friendship to romance was a little tricky. I was quite attracted, obviously, but I kept thinking before I even started dating her, I was dating a roommate, so, you know, it was kind of one of those weird,
the old roommate deal, huh?
Weird things, right? But I kept thinking, I'm dating the wrong girl in this apartment, and because I would sit waiting for the roommate to come out on the date, talking to Shannon, thinking, we're having actually a real conversation that was more substance, right, than just, how's the weather?
Right.
So I started to realize that this was somebody that had those qualities that I was interested in looking at, and primarily that I was confident she would be a good nurturer and mother and person who would help me raise a family that would feel loved and cared for.
Did you have a list? Now, be honest. I mean, I remember when we were going to Dixie, and you know, enjoying school and a lot of activities and things. But there was some, you know, idea that maybe we'd write a list of things that you wanted.
Yeah.
Did you have a list?
Yeah, but it was a really short list.
What was on the list? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was really, really that. I wanted a friend. I wanted someone I could really have a conversation with, that we could enjoy each other's company and have meaningful thoughts back and forth. And that, you know, of course, I have to be attracted, right? There's that I had to be, you know, thinking this is a beautiful woman. But beauty, not necessarily in the sense of all looks as far as physical, right? I was looking for that inner beauty as well as that, you know, something that was striking to me that I thought was attractive.
Sure.
And then one of the next ones was, I thought I would have to perceive that she would raise children that knew that she loved them and cared for them, and that there was no question in their mind ever.
Did you give her any tests? Did you go wash her car and spray her with water to see how she'd react, to see her temperament, you know? Or
yeah, we spent a lot of time together, and yet it wasn't romantic. So it was very focused on who she is, right? And it wasn't about, you know, the kiss or the hug or the romance of the whole thing.
I think you enjoyed that too.
I did, but that came later.
Sure.
It literally came, I think I spent a year being friends, at least a year.
That's amazing.
So
would you recommend that?
Yeah, I know that's not practical for everybody, right? I mean, I know that doesn't really my story isn't everybody's story.
Sure.
But I just was so, maybe traumatized is a too hard a word, but I just didn't want to be ever in a situation like my parents.
Yeah. Well, our life experience, so the things that form us, one is our innate, what's called nature, the way we're born, the way you're hardwired, the way you
Sure.
you see the world, your perceptions and things. Then we have our family, and then we have our culture. So all of that helps us kind of become who we are.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So I think, so obviously, you had some ideas and some thoughts that those who their parents never went through a divorce, you actually did consider and you think about. And that's a big deal. So let's just kind of move on here now. So as you found a wonderful woman, you got married, moved to Arizona, started having kids, and you lived there for a long time. How long?
Well, we actually moved to Cleveland first, so we were Midwesterners for about a year and a half.
Oh,
had
wow.
our first child there, and Brent, and he showed up and changed our world. Right, as I tell all the students who I work with, this is want to talk about changing your world. Marriage is one. Having the first child is another, and then the second and third, or however many children you have, right? It changes your world, whether it's 1 or 2 or 5.
Yeah, just for fun, I had a conversation with my son and his wife. They've been married about a year and a half, and they're talking about getting a kitty. They want to get a kitty. I'm like, really? Yeah, or a dog or something, because she loves animals, and she's such a cutie. But it just changes your world. But when you have a baby, you can't just pick up and go snowboarding.
No.
I mean, you have to have a diaper bag to go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
I mean, you're up in the middle of the night, you're sleep deprived, all these things. And that really does. I think that's a good point. It really changes.
Yeah.
Right?
It changed our world. I'm assuming it changes everybody's world, but that's an assumption. But yeah, I can't imagine how that doesn't shift priorities and mental processes, things like that.
Did you get a manual when you came home from the hospital?
We always laugh with our kids, when now we have our first grandchild, second grandchild on the way, and we're like, there is no manual. There's just, and every personality, every kid is different, right? Every little soul is unique.
Yeah, the personality is so different. They're right out of the womb, they're either more huggy or less. Yeah, a little
more studious or sober, right? More jovial.
Absolutely.
So you have to start to adapt your style of parenting to that fathering, and I loved every minute of it. I like I said, I had good patterns in my life that I could take on, and things that certainly some that probably weren't good patterns, but I at least realized what I had to have my children have is that they needed to know that they were absolutely loved, that they were cherished, that they could come to us with anything. We would still care for them, love them, do anything that they needed us to do to know that they were safe.
Now think about this. Were you intentional in that? Was that something you actually thought about doing, or did you just do it?
No, we did it. We thought about it. We went
about it?
We went to classes about
parenting classes.
Yeah, we went to parenting classes. We really thought through, Shannon and I. We went to one that really kind of changed our lives, just in the simple concept of there's got to be consequences.
Love and logic?
Yeah. It's been 30.
Yeah.
It's been 20 some odd years. Sure, 30 to 28 years. Wow. So it's
Love and logic is very familiar. They use consequences rather than punishment or avoid the back talk, begging, reminding.
Yeah. And we went to that, and that really changed our mindset. We started to realize, because they talked about lying to your kids, right? If I tell you you're going to get in trouble, and yet you never get in trouble, you were lying to them. And that resonated with us. Whether it resonates with everybody, that's another story. But it resonated with us because we thought, yeah, that makes sense, because we keep telling these kids the same thing, and if we don't follow up with it, then they don't believe us.
Yeah.
And if we don't set that up now, you know, I think we had when we went to this class, I think we had 2 kids under 5, and we realized that we had to start doing that at an early age, or
Sure.
otherwise they wouldn't believe that there were consequences in
Right,
life.
right. Sure.
Right?
So let's just jump forward now a little bit. We have 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
It's gone by fast.
Yeah,
It's been
it has.
fun.
Yep.
You're such a great guy. I really appreciate you a lot and your friendship. But let's talk about 2 things.
Yeah.
And you have about 1 minute each.
Yep.
What do you love? What's your biggest struggle? Tell me in 1 minute. What's your biggest struggle being a dad?
I think not second guessing yourself. You know, just be confident that it's going to work out. You're going to make mistakes, but as long as you're loving those kids, as long as they know that, as long as you've got a pattern that you are comfortable with, you stay the course, because the kids will appreciate that stability, right?
Consistency.
The consistency.
Yeah.
I think that's a struggle for all of us. It's one of my biggest struggles always as a father. And
Awesome. Okay, last minute. What do you love about being a dad? What do you just absolutely love?
You know, I loved them when they were little babies, right? That was so fun to watch them grow and start thinking, and curiosity and all those kinds of things. But I will tell you that as they've grown older and become adults and now start families of their own, to watch that pattern, right? That consistency, that love, that just excitement for their own kids coming, for their spouse, right? For the things that they're doing that I can see will add love and life and adventure and joy to their lives is can't be described.
Awesome. And I see the emotion. You feel it, don't you?
I do.
John Bowler, alumni director, Dixie State University. Thank you so much
Hey,
for
my
being
pleasure,
here with us
Kelly.
today.
Thank you.
It's been awesome. Great talking about being a dad.
It is.
Again, Kelly, Kendall, John Bowler, Radio St. George 100.3. Thanks for being with us today. There you go.
Kelly, that was fun. We spent a lot of time in places you probably didn't want to spend, but that's you get me talking, Kelly. You just ask me questions and I pontificate.